Summer can be a bit of a slog. For us, it's often for some reason a rather busy time, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Well, you can beat the summertime sadness and the August angst and enhance your everyday with our excellent sponsor, Via Hemp. This is a company that crafts award-winning premium THC and THC-free gummies.
Each of these gummies is especially designed to cultivate a specific mood. Whether you're looking to get relaxed, get quality sleep, get creative, or just to get focused. If you're 21 or older, you can experience it for yourself and get 15% off your first order with our exclusive code MSheet at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
I personally enjoyed their grapefruit flow state gummies. This CBG and CBD powerhouse really helped me tap into my productivity. Like, we have had an extremely busy summer, and I feel flow state got me over the finish line a few times when I was editing multiple episodes a day, digging through documents, and knocking out a bunch of interviews.
Via Hemp does not require a medical card, and it ships legally to all 50 states. It's also affordable, and even more so for Murder Sheet listeners who get a special deal.
If you're 21 and older, head to viahemp.com and use code MSheet to receive 15% off. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code MSheet at checkout. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via.
Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Content warning, this episode contains discussion of the murder of 2 girls.
The case of the Delphi murders was thrown into disarray when Mitchell or Mitch Westerman leaked discovery materials from defense attorney Andrew Baldwin's office. Those discovery materials included graphic images of a crime scene involving 2 children, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German. Baldwin and his co-counsel Bradley Rosie withdrew from the case as a result of all this. Now they're fighting to come back on and to throw off Judge Francis Gull. The result has been delays and legal wrangling. On January 18th, 2024, the Indiana Supreme Court will hear oral arguments around who will stay and who will go.
We've gone over the legal aspects of this situation in some depth. We've had on our program those who believe the attorneys should come back and those who believe the judge should stay on. These legal discussions are obviously very relevant. Questions of constitutional rights and legal processes will ultimately determine what happens going forward.
But there's been one important aspect that we have not really explored. That is the emotional ramifications for the families of Abby and Libby. At the heart of this situation, we have 2 murdered children who have been re-victimized once more. Kevin and I talk to victims' families all the time, behind the scenes and on this program. We delve into these cases. We try to report with empathy. But at the end of the day, we have not experienced the pain of losing a loved one to violence. We cannot fully grasp what that is like.
So today we wanted to talk to 2 people who understand it all too well. Both helped to run the National Organization of Parents of Murdered Children.
Connie Shealy's brother, Joel Holbrook, was murdered in Kansas City, Missouri in 1999. His case remains unsolved to this day. Connie is the president of the POMC's National Board of Trustees. He's also the chapter leader of the POMC's Southeast Minnesota chapter, and previously was the board's treasurer.
Lori King's sister, Geneva Ann Odell, was beaten to death and sexually assaulted by Terry Duffy in 1994. For years, Lori worked as a victim advocate at the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections Office of Victim Services. Lori is retired, but still active in her advocacy for victims.
Connie and Lori will be speaking to us about the work that POMC does with victims' surviving family members. They'll also be sharing their thoughts on the Delphi case, the leak of discovery materials, and how we can all keep empathy in mind when it comes to the families of murder victims. If you are listening and you've lost somebody to violence, we'll be including ways to get involved and get resources. Please keep in mind that POMC is there for the surviving families of murder victims. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases. We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is The Delphi Murders, a conversation with leaders from the National Organization of Parents of Murdered Children. First off, Connie and Lori, could you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you came to do this really important advocacy work at the Parents of Murdered Children organization?
Well, I'm Connie, and I first got involved after the murder of my brother. My brother Joel was murdered 24 years ago, and his case remains unsolved, as a matter of fact. That was, as you can imagine, was the most difficult thing I've ever experienced in my family. The most difficult thing we've ever gone through. And after a few months, it was probably about 6 months after, someone I knew told me about Parents of Murdered Children. I had not heard of it before, and a lot of people haven't if they don't need it. But someone had told me about Parents of Murdered Children, and we had a chapter in our local area. So I decided to go to a meeting. And of course, the first one was very difficult because it was my first time. I went by myself, but it's about the best thing I could have done. I'm so glad that I did, that I took that step, because it helped me tremendously in dealing with my grief, with the murder of my brother, as well as, we talk about all the different things that come into play when it's a murder as opposed to any other kind of death. So it helped me so much, and really helped me travel through my journey. And so after a while, I continued to go. And after a while, I decided that I wanted to get involved in the leadership. So I became, first of all, it was a chapter co-leader, and then I became our chapter leader. And then after that, I got involved on the national level with the national organization. And we both of us serve on the National Board of Trustees. And then I've also been very involved in the national conferences that we have every year. So quite involved, but I found, because it helped me so much, I wanted to give back and share my experiences with others. And we all help each other, honestly. I mean, it's a two-way street. We share support with others, and others share support with me. So it's a family. It's become a family that none of us wanted to join, but we're so glad that we had this family to join when we needed it.
Really well said, and just so sorry for your loss. Lori, do you want to introduce your role and your sort of journey with this?
My sister Geneva was murdered. She was beat and sexually assaulted, and she was my baby sister. I remember in the emergency room after it happened, I looked at her and I made a promise to her that day that I was going to always do my best to help others and not go through the hell that she went through. And so that's what I live by, and I will to the end, being a victim advocate. I actually went through training, became a victim advocate for nationally and state through NOVA, National Organization for Victim Assistance, and also through the Ohio Advocate Network program. So, got as much information as I could. I started off by working the very first director of victim witness in Fayette County, Washington Courthouse, Ohio. And then from there, I moved on to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, Office of Victim Services, where I have covered Southwest Ohio, helping crime victims. In the meantime, with all that being said, I also got very involved with Parents of Murdered Children. And with Parents of Murdered Children, they are absolutely part of our family. Very, it's a family you never wanted and would trade certainly if your loved one was back, but you are blessed every single day to know that you have this family who understands like nobody else can understand what we've all been through. You know what I mean? And I am the vice president of the Parents of Murdered Children Board, and I do my best, as Connie was saying as well, to give back and help others.
Thank you so much, Lori. And I just want to also just say we're so sorry for your loss. I just want to say for both of you that your decision to put that pain into helping others and helping other families in the same position is just incredibly commendable. And we're just very honored to have you on tonight. I guess for my next question, I'll just ask, can you tell us a bit more about POMC, what kind of work it does, and just, give us an overview?
Yes, Parents of Murdered Children was founded in 1978 in Cincinnati, Ohio, by Robert and Charlotte Hullinger, whose 19-year-old daughter was murdered. They didn't know what to do or how to get through their traumatic grief when that happened, and they were introduced to a few other parents, and they first met in their home to support each other and try to figure out how to move forward and help each other deal with their grief. And since that first meeting in 1978, POMC has grown into a national organization with many local chapters located all across the country. And POMC exists to provide support, advocacy, education, awareness, and assistance to survivors of murder. We welcome all family members and friends of those who have died by violence. And there are many resources available through the National POMC office, providing information and resources and all kinds of things, as well as resources through the local chapters. Parents of Murdered Children provide support and tips for survival, navigating the criminal justice system, as well as various other programs that are offered. The national organization of POMC also holds an annual national conference that's located in different locations across the country each summer. This year, in 2024, our conference will be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 18th through the 21st. It's open to any survivors as well as professionals who work with survivors. They're welcome to come as well. As I mentioned, the local chapters that are located across the country, we hold monthly support group meetings, either in person and or virtually. There's a lot of chapters, including mine, that offers virtual support group meetings, and they're for members to receive and offer support to each other, just help each other. We talk about whatever it is we need to talk about. Everybody's at a different place in their journey at different times, and so we just talk about whatever we need to talk about. Some chapters also hold special events, such as the National Day of Remembrance for murder victims, as well as provide court accompaniment to support others when they have trials.
So, drilling down on this specific case, we're talking about the Delphi murders case tonight, specifically the leak. And having looked into it a bit, can you share your thoughts on the case and the leak as a survivor of a murdered relative?
Well, first and foremost, it's certainly a sad situation about the leak of the information. And now it is not kept safe anymore and confidential. The victims, even after death, are being re-victimized because of this leak. And so are their families. The question now is, what will happen with the information? That's the big question.
There's some people out there who have been fortunate enough not to be in the situation you have found yourself in, and have never lost family members to violence like this. And maybe they don't understand can you speak as to why the leak of crime scene photos would be so traumatic from the perspective of the surviving family members?
Sure. First of all, to me, it would feel like a big invasion of privacy. We should all think about how we would feel, or anyone should think about how you would feel if the photos were of our loved ones or your loved ones, or if they were even of ourselves. And I know I wouldn't want others to see photos of either myself or my loved ones like that. Family members can be re-traumatized by seeing those photos and knowing that the public is able to view them as well. Loved ones can be re-traumatized every time they see the photos or someone else even talks about them. We all want to remember our loved ones in the way they lived, not how they died. And that's how we want others to see and remember them. On top of the trauma the victims' families are already experiencing, finding out that the crime scene photos were leaked, the pain and shock can take them even deeper into their grief. And hopefully the families have already talked to a victim advocate and the prosecutor about the details of the murder and the crime scene, which may help to prepare them for what they may hear about the details of the leak.
And then this next question, I feel, Connie, you sort of already answered it, but I'll ask it anyway, because the scenario that unfortunately comes to mind with this situation is the possibility of the victim's surviving family members, in this case, seeing without consent and without opting to images of their dead loved ones. And I suppose, can you speak to the meaning of viewing the body of a loved one who's died by violence, and what that would mean for somebody who cares about that victim versus just somebody who's in the public who may be unconnected?
A loved one can be traumatized, certainly, by viewing the body or the photographs of the loved one's body. It is a personal. When it is someone you love, it has a different impact. Family knows the victim, who they were, and what their heart was and soul was. And they have that special connection with that victim. And those images and the pain and the suffering they see and feel when they, look at those photos and the image of what their loved one went through. And it brings up all of the same questions, reoccurring thoughts of what they went through over and over again, as they, think about it. When your loved one was murdered, it is something that your heart, you think about them all the time and, wish that you could have done something to save them, done something, before that. But just knowing the pain that they went through, and you just feel it every single time that you view someone, a victim. They are more than likely, when it comes to someone who doesn't have that perspective and that investment, it's more than likely that person is just curious to, know what happened. And then they simply are like, oh, that's a sad situation. And then they just simply move on. It's the ripple effect, again, of crime. They're sorry that happened to the victim and the impact of, but they're unconnected. And again, they just simply move on.
What does it mean to a victim's surviving family members that anytime they log on to check their email or to visit Facebook or YouTube or what have you, they have to worry now about seeing something that they should never have to see?
That's a good question. I would say there would probably be a very cautious apprehension and fear about what they may see when they log on and what may show up unexpectedly that they're not prepared for. And when that happens, it would be traumatizing all over again. And if it were me, I would probably most likely limit my online activity to avoid that re-traumatization. Or I would ask a trusted friend or family member to log on first to kind of act as a screener for the information. So someone else, if there was something, they would see it and, screen it for me. So that's what I think would be the case. How I would react to that.
What does it mean for surviving family members when people online or wherever treat a murder case as if it's a parlor game?
That's another very good question. And for those of us who have had a loved one murdered, that has a whole different meaning. So to many surviving family members, this can be very offensive. There are people who treat a murder case as entertainment or like an adventure. And for those whose family members have been murdered, a murder case is not a game, but it's a reality. It's not entertainment, but it's real life. One of POMC's many programs is called MIND, which stands for Murder is Not Entertainment. And the MIND program draws attention to how our society, entertainment, etc., has used violence, especially murder, as a topic of entertainment. This has made people indifferent to how murder affects those who have experienced it in their lives. Murder is not entertainment. It is a reality. It is our reality. I personally am particularly offended when I see a group or an organization host a murder mystery party or murder mystery dinner theater. One of the activities that has been utilized in the POMC MIND program is a similar game, which is called Pedophile on the Playground. Whenever that game idea follows the same format as a murder mystery, but it's a pedophile on the playground. And whenever that game idea is shared with other people, people will like gasp and say, "You can't do that." But, in actuality, there really isn't such a game. It's just to prove a point. It's fictitious. But however, I always wonder, well, why is that not okay? But it's okay to make a game out of murder. In recent years, it seems like this attitude towards murder and violence has really shifted and become more acceptable, more commonplace. And that makes me very sad.
The one thing about being the surviving family member of a murder victim is if you are not telling other people, they don't necessarily know that. So when you're hosting something like that, it might end up being pretty insensitive to somebody. There's no visible marking that you've lost a relative to violence. But if you're then put in that situation, I imagine it could be incredibly triggering. So people need to understand that and proceed with caution when dealing with stuff like that. This is kind of a related question, but we've seen in the Delphi case, it's attracted an inordinate amount of online attention. I would say some of that attention has been positive or well-intentioned because it's coming from a place of people, I think, who want justice for the girls and want to see that happen. So intentions are good largely, but there's also a lot of unhelpful behavior from people who are both good intentioned and bad intentioned. And so when does the environment around a case go from being helpful, people spreading information, calling for a solve, pressuring the police to stay on the case and work it really hard, to unhelpful, meaning that it's like morbid curiosity prompting people to spread stuff around like leaked crime scene photos? What's the line there?
Well, it is helpful for people to provide legitimate assistance in a case, such as sharing useful factual information or witness information. It crosses a line, certainly, when unsubstantiated rumors are spread, gossip, speculations are shared, probing curiosity, and unsensitive comments, which, is just very sad. And those rumors can be so hurtful. But, just remembering the factual information and that is certainly the most helpful.
One thing we've heard from people is they don't understand why this particular leak of crime scene photos is a big deal, because it's evidence that would be seen in court. And I was just wondering how you would respond to that, or what do you make of that argument?
Crime scene photos are traumatizing to family members. They don't need to be subject to seeing the photos, and the public doesn't have a need to see them. Yes, the photos would be viewed in a courtroom by a jury, but they may not be made accessible to all to see them, nor do they need to be. The photos are of a child victims. Whoever leaked them should certainly be charged and convicted for disseminating child victim photos. The leak of these photos is not fine. The Indiana Victims' Rights Law says all victims of crime in Indiana have the right to fairness, dignity, and respect, freedom from intimidation and harassment and abuse.
Based on what you know, do you have any opinions you'd care to share about how you view the defense attorney's role in this situation?
Well, I feel that the defense attorney should be held accountable for his role in the leak of these photos because, as Lori said, making these photos public is not okay. And it is not showing respect and dignity to the child victims.
And in this case, in the Delphi case, we have a gag order. It's a pretty broad one. And it not only incorporates the parties in the trial, so the defense attorneys and the prosecutor, but actually the victims' families as well and witnesses. And what are your thoughts on the gag order? Specifically, one thing we've noticed is that it's prevented the families of the victims in this situation from speaking out, especially at a time like this when they've been so adversely affected by this leak. And so I guess just with that in mind, what are your thoughts on the gag order as it pertains to this case?
Well, I just think it may be necessary to keep the details private that pertain to the facts of the case. However, families many times need to express their feelings and to aid in their healing as long as it doesn't jeopardize the case. The Indiana Victims' Rights allows the victims the right to confer with a prosecutor's office, for the victims' families to be able to speak to the prosecutor's office to get the clear understanding about what they are allowed to speak about and what they're not allowed to speak about. That clarification of what this gag order means for them.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it was so broadly written and stated that it's driving some of the quiet in this situation. And I hope that they're able to find that voice if they want to. Obviously, it's not their role to police the situation, but they're very eloquent when it comes to speaking on these topics. How can the legal system make victims' surviving family members feel re-victimized all over again through the legal process?
Well, sometimes victim blaming happens, and that's hurtful to families. When family members feel like their feelings aren't considered, or the leak of the photos is re-victimizing, as well as the gag order can be hurtful, depending, I don't know all the details of that. But the timeline of the court case moving through the judicial system, the delays and the postponements, that affects the family because they want to get some justice. In some cases, families may not always be kept informed of what is happening with the case and what to expect, like when they go to trial. It's helpful to know that ahead of time what's going to happen. On the other side, a positive for victims' families are the victims' rights to be kept informed, the right to be heard, and the right to present a victim impact statement at the sentencing. Those are all positives that can be helpful for a family.
Absolutely. I'm a journalist. One thing that I'm always curious about is how can the media, especially the traditional media, do better when it comes to dealing with crime stories? And I think for this question, I'd also like to include social media, because new media creators like podcasts, like YouTube, have been important in this case as well. And I'm curious, in your perspective, how can traditional media and social media make victims' surviving family members feel re-victimized all over again by their actions?
I think sometime by sensationalizing events, stories, not properly researching facts and what is reported or shared, especially on social media, people tend to speculate, gossip, etc. And I think, as long as, people are respectful and ask the question, give, the facts, clear facts, and not, be out there trying to sensationalize. It is so very important.
Defense attorneys, of course, have a role to play in the process where they're obliged to represent and defend their clients, some of whom are accused of or are guilty of some pretty heinous things. Is there a way that defense attorneys and defense teams can be sensitive to victims' families while still vigorously trying a case?
There is a line there, I think. I understand, the defense attorneys do have a job to do to represent their clients. But I think if they can refrain from the victim blaming, as I mentioned before, and act in a respectful manner, just be respectful to the victims and their families. And victims' families don't have to talk to the defense attorney unless they are testifying in court and are asked questions by the defense attorney. So if they are asked to speak to them outside of the courtroom, they don't have to do that. So, that's one way that to be respectful towards families.
And how can both journalists and other new media creators, such as maybe non-journalistic podcasters and YouTubers and moderators on different social media platforms, be more sensitive to victims' families in a situation like Delphi, in a high-profile murder case?
Well, I think I alluded to it a little bit ago. Just simply be respectful, factual, present information, the victims' families from the victims' families' perspective, and put yourself in the family's shoes and think about what you would want. Acknowledge the family member's loss and ask permission for what they would like you to share. And also remember to share resources, because you guys are out there being able to give the opportunity for families to hear information, offer resources and tools to help these families out there, to help them cope, offer to do tribute memorial for the two girls would be another beautiful thing to do if the family were interested in that at any point. And then most importantly, remember the victims, remember the girls.
Really well said. That's why we're so grateful to be talking to you both tonight, because I feel like people learning more about parents of murdered children, if people who are listening have lost somebody or they know somebody who has lost somebody, I want them to really be strongly considering, maybe you're not ready right now, but at some point in the future, this organization does wonderful work and can have resources for you in your specific situation, because you don't have to go through this alone, even though I'm sure it's a very, very lonely feeling, especially at first. So I want to go into how this is a broader question, because this more applies to some of our listeners and just people who are interested in true crime. I like to think a lot of our listeners don't really see it as entertainment so much as they want to be informed, and they want to be educated. And I think that's where they're coming from. But how can people who are just following these cases be more sensitive to victims' families when they're consuming that information and those products that have essentially been made about a homicide?
Well, I would say just remember to always to give the victim's family members space that they need to navigate the new world that they live in. Because when this happened, their lives have changed forever from this event, this tragic event. Give them time, let them have the time to grieve the loss of their loved ones. And again, just be respectful. Just, be caring for the family members and respectful, and just give them the space they need.
Do you have any thoughts for the families in this Delphi situation going forward in the face of this leak and the possible reinstatement of the defense attorneys?
Well, first and foremost, the victims' families, don't have any control over this part of the judicial system. But with that being said, I would suggest that they stay connected with the victim advocates in the prosecutor's office. And also another good key tool would be to keep your own records of any pertinent information and documentation that you're permitted to have through the courts and things like that. Ask the advocate to keep you informed of any step-by-step information as it becomes available, and that they're permitted to share with you so that they are prepared and ready. And anytime there is a court hearing on this case, the victims' families have the right to be informed of the hearings and to be present when the defendant is present in the court. So those are just key important things for the victims to know that they have. And again, some things are out of their control. So that part of it, they may not have, most likely don't have a control over that part of it.
Absolutely. And this is a question for both of you, just speaking as survivors of murdered family members. What is it like for you to see victims' families in this situation go through something as traumatic as this leak and some of this heightened public scrutiny?
Well, it is definitely heartbreaking, and it really breaks my heart. We personally know what they're dealing with. Not everything that they're dealing with, but we know the experience that they've gone through, and we know the journey that they are on. So our hearts are with them, with the families, and it's just really heartbreaking, everything that's happened.
And the same here, I feel the same, just heartbreaking, but I want them to know they are not alone. We are here if they need anything. Again, we've got that support for them. We have people that can, especially that connection who've lost a loved one and has that better possible understanding of that impact that they might be going through right now. So our hearts certainly go out to them.
Of course, the POMC is there for a lot of people who go through this terrible situation. Can you tell us a little bit about what services and resources the POMC provides families?
Absolutely. Parents Murdered Children provides support, advocacy, education, awareness, and like I said, assistance to survivors of murder. We welcome all family members and friends of those who have died by violence. There are many resources available through the National Parents and Murdered Children Office, providing information and resources, as well as through local chapters. There's local chapters right there in Indiana as well. POMC provides support and tips for survival, navigating the criminal justice system, because many of us have been there, done that, going through this court process. So again, they're not alone if they wanted to, or anyone out there that's listening, that's a crime victim, to, Parents of Murdered Children organization is here. As Connie alluded to earlier, we hold a annual national conference this year. Again, it's in Las Vegas, July 18th through the 21st. And the local chapters hold support groups every month. Support group meetings, some of them are in person, others are virtual. So that's nice, for the Zoom meetings, if you can't travel in, but you can, be part of that support group in that way. Even if you just go and attend the first time and you don't say a word, you're just there and taking in the information. And to hear these family members talk about their loved ones or say their loved one's name in a safe environment where, others around them understand and care. We also have a special event called National Day of Remembrance, September 25th of each year is the National Day to remember homicide victims, murder victims, as well as to provide, we provide court accompaniments to support and show that support in the courtroom with the crime victims' families. So we do that as well during the trials. There are 2 local chapters, again, in Indiana that offer support. One's in Hobart, Indiana, It's the Greater Midwest chapter. The phone number for them, it is area code 219-616-0069, or another number would be 219-682-7285. Then our other chapter is the Kentuckiana chapter. It's in Louisville, Kentucky. That phone number, area code 502-930-3853. And again, those are two good connections for families.
Yeah, if there are people out there, maybe even in other parts of the country, who are in this terrible situation and have heard you listing and discussing some of the services you offer, and they want that sort of help, how could they contact the POMC?
Anyone across the country can contact the National Organization of Parents of Murdered Children office. It's located in Cincinnati, Ohio, which was the birthplace where the organization started. We have a website, which is pomc.org, pomc.org. And on the website, there's all kinds of information and resources. There's also a tab that says chapters. So anyone can go on there and click on the chapters tab and find all the different chapters that are out there in the country. So if you live in another state, California, Oregon, Georgia, wherever you are, you can find a chapter that's close to you. As well as we mentioned before that some chapters do offer their support group meetings by Zoom, which my local chapter does that, and so do several others. But the national office can help with that information, which chapters are available for you to join by Zoom if you're not able to find one that's close to you. They can help with that as well. There's also a phone number you can call. The phone number for the national office is 513-721-5683. So you can either call or go to the website and find all types of information and resources and connect with a chapter that you can share with and for support.
And yeah, again, we really strongly encourage if you're a listener out there who's dealing with this, or you know someone who is, this is a great organization, and you should, consider going there and looking into some of these resources, because you will be with people who understand on some level what you're going through in a way that not everybody can. And I love what you both said earlier about it being a family that you never want to join, but
you don't have to be alone.
Yeah. What does the public, the people who maybe are not part of that family, because they've not been through this awful situation, what does the public need to better understand about what surviving family members of homicide victims are going through in order to just understand that better and maybe engage with more empathy and more understanding in those situations?
Well, I think, first of all, survivors need to have space, just to be given space for their privacy. Everyone grieves differently, different rates. Some people, I think, don't understand that. Oh, it's been 6 months. You should be dealing with it differently now. It's been 2 years. Why are you still dealing with this now? They don't understand. And so I think, people need to realize that there is no time limit on that grief of a loved one. Just understand and be compassionate to them the best you can. And again, just give them that time to grieve.
And then our final question is there anything we didn't ask you, Connie and Lori, that you wanted to mention that you think it's important to note?
If you know someone who has suffered the death of a loved one through homicide, encourage the survivors to contact parents of murdered children. Just give them the information, share that with them, and encourage them to contact us, because it can be very helpful. And like we already said, it is a family. It's a family none of us wanted to be a part of because the dues were too high to join. But we are really glad that we have this family, because it can be a lifesaver, for a lot of people. And when someone does contact the National Organization of Parents of Murdered Children, they will be given a packet of information that contains a lot of resources in their area, as well as the programs and services that's provided by the national organization. And again, you can also find a lot of that information on the website as well.
Wonderful. Well, that was all of our questions. I really think this is going to be so helpful for some of our listeners because I know we have families listening.
Thanks so much to Connie and Lori, and to everyone with POMC for the incredible work they do.
Please, if you are going through something like this, or you know someone who is, if you're just in touch with people involved in a murder case who've lost loved ones to violence, please let them know about this wonderful resource.
Thanks so much for listening to the Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for the Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.